So my Starbucks name is Will. Why, you ask? Well, when they used to write the names on the cups, I would say Dennis. And 100% of the time, the barista making my drink would shout out Denise. So I just used the one syllable from my last name, Will, Williams, of course. I highly recommend a one-syllable name for any and all takeout orders. They can't screw it up. With that sage advice, we're ready to start the Back Nine.
This is the Back Nine with Dennis Williams and Josh Mora.
All right, Josh. Have they ever missed?
Oh, yes.
Have they ever messed up your name?
Yes.
And how do they mess up your name?
Well,
Josh is one syllable.
Josh,
you can't screw it up.
You would think Jose. All the time, people will say Jose.
Well, with your last name, it fits.
It could. I do
Josh
have a
Mora.
Hispanic-sounding
Josh
last name.
Mora.
It could be Jose Mora.
That's probably why they did it. Did they know your last name?
No, I'm sure it's a Starbucks. No, I'm sure there are more Jose Moras in the world than there are Josh Moras in the world. But there's a case where it goes from one syllable to two. I don't know what to make of that.
Okay.
Jose, but it's not like Josh is an uncommon name. I mean, it's in the freaking Old Testament, for crying out loud.
Okay, very, very good point. All right, I have a front nine question for you, really, to start this show out.
Okay.
Other than Caddyshack, what was your favorite comedy that you saw on the front nine movie?
Fletch.
Yes.
Not even close.
That's not even. That's absolutely
There's some
right.
great. I would
But you notice I had to say other than Caddyshack because everybody our age and our demographic.
Well, golf fans for sure, but yes,
golf fans, white men.
I would add one other one: Midnight Run with Charles Grodin and Robert De Niro.
Okay,
fantastic, hysterically funny movie with outstanding performances from a variety of people. Those are probably my two favorite rewatchable 80s comedies.
I'll give you one really famous one and one not so famous one. Airplane, obviously, is a classic and funny. Yeah. The other one was The Sure Thing, one of John Cusack's first movies. Very underrated movie, hilarious, where he got his start. Great movie. The other Caddyshack movies, not so much. But anyway.
I feel the same way about the other Fletch movies. Did you see the...
Oh, my gosh. Or the
one with John Hamm this summer, or a couple summers ago, did not work at all.
Oh, yeah.
And he's funny, John Hamm, and he was not in this movie. And I guess it would be hard to try to recapture a character played by somebody else. You can't do what they did, right? You have to put your own spin on it.
Unless you're James
Bond.
That's
a challenge.
I guess there's James Bond. You can kind of do the...
Well, the character transcends everything.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, especially in a comedy, you can't take somebody's comedy script and do that. That doesn't work.
It's tricky. And Chevy Chase's on the original, his signature was pretty unique.
Yeah, the Fletch movies are great. Well, listen, there's a reason for that I brought all of that up. And we could do a whole show on movies.
This was
probably
very well strategized.
Front nine, back nine. We are with the founder and CEO, Brad Carpenter, of Bushwood Spirits. Brad, so happy to have you on the show. Bushwood Spirits, anybody who knows Caddyshack knows how you got that name and where you came up with it. Welcome to the show, Brad. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Yeah, and very happy to be here.
Tell us the story about the foundation of this and how you came up with this idea. We're going to get into a lot of things during this show, but we want to know how you came up with this. And by the way, we are sporting a bottle in studio of your Front Nine bourbon, so hopefully I can get through the show. But no, it's so good, dude. So Josh, who doesn't even drink anymore, really, but he was a bourbon drinker back in his day, took a couple sips of this, and he considers himself a connoisseur. So he was loving it.
A connoisseur, but yes, it's delicious. I'll get into that. But Brad, I want you to ask the question. You're the guest. I want you to answer the story.
No, it's great. Yeah, Bushwood was inspired a solid 12, 13 years ago. I was involved in a car accident and injured my brachial plexus, which is essentially everything over here, all the nerve roots coming out of here.
On the left side,
Yeah, on the left side. And I went to my friend of mine who's a very prominent orthopedic surgeon in Dallas, and he indicated to me that I had a pretty severe injury, which was compressing the nerves in my left arm and throughout this entire area here.
Which just for our fans who are only listening, Brad, I'm sorry to interrupt. You're pointing to the upper shoulder, the traps on top of the left shoulder there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, literally everything.
Yeah.
They put me on a medication which was relatively new at the time called Lyrica. And Lyrica is the latest generation at that time of a medication called gabapentin, which basically calms your nerves down. So damaged nerves It's used for people with peripheral neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, and things like that. In my particular case, they used it to settle down the nerve because the nerves literally were severely compressed and injured. So when that happens, it feels like your arm's on fire on the inside. Well, what happened with me is I had an allergic reaction to the medication. And within 30 days of being placed on that medication, my left arm was completely paralyzed. So going through the process of going back to doctors and then taking on new doctors and having the doctors look at me as if, I don't know what's going on with you. I don't know how to help you. Let's get some imaging done. They began the process, a very arduous process of doing many scans of my brain, of my spinal cord, looking for signs of ALS. I mean, they had no idea why I had spontaneous paralysis. And so I mentioned during the course of this time, I said to my doctor, could it be this medication? No. This medication would never do that. That's not how it works. So being I guess you would say, a resilient individual. I mean, I've had some adversity in my life, even from my childhood. And I think at a certain point, who you really are just kind of comes out. And so I accepted very quickly what my situation was rather than feeling sorry for myself. I felt very certain that I was going to recover from this injury. And no matter what my doctor said or what tests they were running on me, I was pretty confident I was going to get through it. And so I would bide my time, and I was watching from time to time reruns of Caddyshack on DVD when I wasn't at the golf course with my buddies. When you're alone, you can either go dark or you can go forward. And in my particular case, I'm sort of an obsessive compulsive individual as it is. And when watching Caddyshack over and over again, I was like, I just cannot believe nobody's made a sequel to this show, like a real sequel to this show. There's an endless amount of material for a backstory, endless amount of material to take these characters forward. I mean, it's really, there's just a voluminous amount of material. It kind of exploded from there. And over the course of the next couple of years, I finished work on that particular project and then took it out to LA and got an opportunity to pitch it to John Peters and it was greeted very, very passionately. So I was very proud of the process that I'd gone through.
So where do things stand with that now? I'm obviously your bourbon is fantastic. It's making a name for itself. It's been all over the place, and it's high end stuff. I mean, this is no joke. I mean, you obviously spent a lot of time. I mean, a lot of people are in the bourbon world now, but your space is pretty profound. In fact, we first connected with you to try to find out if we could try the Back Nine bourbon because that was the name of the show, and you're like, well, that's sold out. so you're doing well with it.
Yeah, the brand has taken off. I mean, once I kind of was able to come up with a story, I called my lawyer early on and I asked him if I could trademark the name Bushwood for a whiskey because I fell in love with the name for a whiskey. The trademarks expanded to Who's Your Caddy, Be the Ball, all of which I own, and countless others. So now we've got a portfolio of 50 trademarks, trade dress patents, copyrights, et cetera, a lot of golf-related verbiage. So after that took place, I really kind of kept the evolution of the project to myself. And as fate would have it, I ran into some friends of mine and got an opportunity to attend a pretty prestigious party. And during that party, everybody in the room was talking about, we got to start a booze brand. And I'd had a couple cocktails. And for the first time, I spoke of it publicly. And I said, hey, I got an idea. And they all looked at me. It was like an E.F. Hutton moment, right? and that's dating myself, too. So
that's a front nine reference.
Yeah.
So I said, what do you think about a name Bushwood for a whiskey? And they leaned forward and they looked at me and they said, you mean like Caddyshack Bushwood? And I said, yeah. And they said, hasn't that been done? And I said, well, that's impossible because I own all the
trademarks,
intellectual property related to it. I said, but I plan on it being something. So the next day, literally within 24 hours, the guy who threw the party and I formed a partnership and he invested in the company and that started the process of Bushwood. And so now we are distributed in 14 states. We've got partnerships with Costco, Kroger, Total Wine, Bevmo. The list goes on. And we're Invited Clubs partners, Troon Golf partners. We're aligned with the PGA Tour, LPGA Tour, Champions Tour. We're represented by William Morris Endeavor.
Wow.
Eddie Fernandez, World Long Drive Champion, is a buddy of ours and a mutual friend, and love the guy. And so the brand itself has kind of taken on its own persona, right, if you will, and people love it. So we've continued to maintain a degree of quality across the spectrum of all of our products and released our vodka at the beginning of this year, our potato vodka, which is exceptional. And we're moving into some other areas later this year. So including RTDs that are going to be a spinoff of our Looper vodka, and then ultimately some whiskey RTDs. So
that's fantastic. Brad, Dennis is a vodka guy. And when I used to partake more, I was always a brown liquor guy. Did you know anything about the industry other than as a consumer? And how did you work to develop the flavor palettes? Because whiskey is not just whiskey. It's not like there are lots of different kinds of notes. So how did you develop? So it's that part of the business, right? I mean, you can run a business, but that area where you're really trying to create a quality product, what went into all of that?
Yeah, it's a great question. In the whiskey space, I was a Scotch drinker when I was younger, right? Going through my 30s. And I wasn't really experienced with bourbon. And when I came up with the idea for the whiskey, when I chose whiskey because whiskey was becoming a thing, right? Mm-hmm. Whiskey went through this sort of, let's call the dark ages, right? Where you couldn't sell your whiskey, and the most premium whiskeys were selling for nothing. And you went into this time, which was immediately followed by COVID, and the bourbon marketplace exploded. And so what transpired during the early stages of the development of the product is that I began to realize that I was going to have to immerse myself in the culture of bourbon. And so I did. So I spent a great deal of time going to Kentucky, going to Louisville specifically, and then Bardstown. I met everybody. I've always been the kind of guy that if I was interested in something, I, for whatever reason, would pick up the phone and call the most powerful person in that business and see if I could get him on the phone. And in this particular case, I did the exact same thing. So for me, it was really a process of tasting the whiskeys that were afforded me, that the opportunities that I had to buy juice, because early on we sourced aged juice, right? You don't just start selling 15-year-old whiskey when you're a brand new company, right? So you have to have partners that have great whiskey. We invariably got the best of the best juice out there. And it wasn't just me that was responsible for making sure that we were putting incredibly high quality bourbon in our bottles. It was the people around me that I hired, that I trusted to help me in that endeavor. So it is a process. It's a process that'll tax your liver a little bit, as you probably know. Gosh, so it did. It was an interesting time. And as I've gotten through the process, right, of education, it's like when you're in college, when you're going for your MBA, you're grinding. But once you get the MBA, you step back a little bit and you use a little bit some of the things that you learned in MBA school, but by and large, you're chilling, you're relaxing. So now it's time to play. Now that I'm through the process of taking myself out and drinking Japanese whiskey, Irish whiskey, bourbon, etc., all in one night, which you're not supposed to do, by the way. I think you probably know that, John. I got through that process, and I would tell you I drink less overall than I ever have in my entire life. And it's because if I drank every time I had the opportunity being in the business, I'd be dead man.
Yeah.
Right.
We'll be right back. Friends, I want to tell you about a really exciting company called Peat Learning. Peat is dedicated to helping organizations of all sizes optimize their training initiatives. They specialize in enabling the development of AI-powered courses, which can then be tailored for all kinds of corporate training needs. Peat Learning offers a suite of customizable and extremely cost-effective solutions that enable companies to deliver personalized workforce learning to their employees. Put simply, Peat is an indispensable partner for any evolving company. So visit Peat Learning at peat.com. That's PETE.com.
If you need a benefit auctioneer for your next fundraising gala, hire Eric Goodman, who's broken fundraising records all over the country. Josh and I have known Eric for over 30 years, and he's one of the most passionate, energetic, and hardworking people we know. Eric's consulting strategies and successful fundraising techniques is why he raised $1 million in 10 minutes at a recent event. Visit yourfundraisingteam.com to see a video of his work, testimonials, and then book with Eric today so your nonprofit can have a record-breaking night.
All right, back to the show.
Brad, let's shift gears and talk about other transitions in your life. You obviously went through that major health scare, right? And had to transition. You also have a family, beautiful family now later in life. Talk about the sort of that transition, that back nine tradition to your personal life really undergoing a huge change and the realizations that you had by that really difficult health scare.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would characterize myself pre-accident as extraordinarily cocky and arrogant. I don't think those things are true now. I think I'm very confident But when you're faced with the magnitude of injury that I was going through and went through for a number of years, and you really don't know, you can tell yourself, yeah, nobody's going to stop me, right? That's what people say when they're diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. They're like, well, I'm not going to, nobody's going to take me out. I'm going to beat this thing, right? So, and I did the same thing, right? I was like, I'm going to make it through this process. But I spent a lot of time walking, a lot of time really thinking. And I had that downtime, which I'd never had before in my life, to analyze myself and analyze the decisions that I'd made in my life with respect to relationships and business decisions. And you kind of really reflect on who you are and how did you get here, right? And it doesn't matter that it's a car accident. It doesn't matter that it's an accident at all. What matters is that you're like, how did I get here? I mean, I'm looking at my life. I'm kind of feeling sorry for myself. But why am I feeling sorry for myself? I mean, what do I have to be grateful for? And I kind of was like, got to be honest with you. I mean, my life's pretty superficial. And it was after going through that and after spending a lot of time in Texas, I made the decision that as I was recovering from my injury, I said, you know what? I said, I've been interested in the entertainment business and in writing specifically screenplays and kind of immersing myself more in the creative mode as opposed to the business mode, which was the lion's share of my life. I said, so I'm going to move out to the coast. I'm going to get out of this heat. I'm going to go out where I think I probably should have been all along, and I'm going to set up a new life. And so I made that choice. And my friends looked at me, and it's still funny to this day because we talk about it. And my closest friend said to me, you'll be back in a year. You don't even have a plan. And I was still injured at the time. And so I said, all right, well, I'm going to tell you that's not going to be the case. So I got out here, and I had a lot of friends out in California. And I leaned on those friends, for a few months, really trying to make sure that it was the right decision for me. And again, it always pays to be a good person in life, because if you've got those bridges at a certain point in your life, people that have your back, which I've always had, if you run up against some struggles, you've got a better opportunity to get through it. So I was very fortunate to have those, and I did make it through it. And once I got out to California, I had a completely different mindset. And I think that mindset was due to the fact that I was starting to recover from my injury. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I put myself out on Match.com, and I put a bunch of old pictures up on Match. I mean, I met pictures that I put up on Match were like probably 5-6 years old, because I'd lost a lot of weight, a lot of muscle mass, but I put really funny captions under each one of my pictures. And my wife will tell you this. She said, I saw the pictures, I thought you were really handsome, but your captions were what got me, because they were hilarious. And I got that from everybody. I mean, I got literally, I'm not joking, thousands of people responded to my Match profile because my captions were funny. So I'm like, all right, this is great. So anyway, one woman in particular captured my interest. She was just kind of a hippie kind of gal and real chill. And we communicated with each other. And the joke is that I went out one night with my buddies here in Corona del Mar. And I came back, and she had sent me a message on Match. And I did a Brad Carpenter thing because I'd had a couple cocktails in me. And I said, hey, yeah, you're kind of interesting. Let's keep this thing going. That was my response to her. And apparently she got my message. She's like, who's this idiot? Yeah, you're kind of interesting. Let's keep this going. So she just didn't say anything. So I woke up the next day, and I checked my Match profile, and I looked, and there was no reply from her at all. And being an introspective guy at this point, being a guy that looks at myself in the mirror and goes, what could you possibly done that would have turned her off? And I read my message again, and I went, oh yeah, that's a good idea. So I sent her a message immediately. I said, I reread my message that I sent to you last night, and I didn't find it very amusing either. So I understand why you didn't reply. She replied very shortly back, and she said, ha, 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 that's exactly correct. I didn't find it very funny. So fast forward, we began a phone conversation, text session that lasted 3 months. We did not meet during this 3-month period of time. We talked all the time. And it was more me sort of measuring her, because I have a pretty good experience with women in Dallas and bad experiences. And so let's just leave it at that. And so I was looking for somebody that kind of did what they said they were going to do, kind of thing. Ultimately, we ended up meeting after the first date. I said, I can't believe I did that. I drove all the way to Encinitas. This is stupid. And lo and behold, she kept in touch, and she said, hey, let's get together again. And I just was I don't think I was ready to do it, ready to have a relationship. But the second date, which took, I think, another couple of months to happen, from that moment forward, it's been now over 10 years. And I can tell you, maybe in 10 years, we spent 2 months apart. And so it was an absolutely incredible meeting. And I can't say it was, it was almost, we talk about it all the time. She is somebody that I upon retrospect, back when I was living in Dallas, I don't think I ever would have said, I'm going to go out with you, or I'm going to spend the rest of my life with you. But having gotten through the accident, having had an opportunity to evaluate myself and my priorities, I met this individual and have since every day when I look at her now, I'm like, I can't even believe how fortunate I am. You're the most beautiful, amazing woman I've ever known in my entire life. And she's my business partner. So she kicked that can down the road and stayed with me, and then told me that she wanted to have kids when we were, I think she was 47 and I was 54. And I said, man, I guess I probably got to haul Bushwood off the shelf and make this thing a reality.
Nice. What was, Brad, it's such a great story. And what strikes me about it is the wisdom that it took to recognize that in yourself. What were the processes that you went through after the accident? So you defined that you did it. Was there any particular pathway that you followed, any particular device or tool that you used beyond the questions that you asked yourself? I think some people can do it on their own, but I think others need some guidance. And I'm just curious as to if there was anything that, beyond the spark of the accident, if there was any particular tool that you utilized to be able to accelerate this growth.
I think for me, it was always a firm belief. I had a belief in myself from a very early age. And when you have successes at an early age in life, you have a little bit more confidence in kids that maybe don't have successes in life. I had successes in sports and I had successes in other areas. And so I've always had just kind of a belief, and that has taken me forward and through adversity. And I'm real proud of that particular aspect of it. But I can also say that at the end of the day, if you're a good person and you're good to other people around you and you're a good friend and you're not insane, you will have a support system around you that can help you get through things. So I think fundamentally, really for me, it was that I never gave up. I just like, all right, they got a noodle arm over there and your buddies have all put it in perspective. It's fantastic. And you can still get dates with the noodle arm. So, what's going on, right? So, how much should you feel sorry for yourself at this particular point in time? Or should you just pick it up and say, all right, I'm going to move forward and go? And I really think that's it. Nothing more than that. I will say that this is true, it's absolutely true. The medication that they put me on for the first few months, when I could have had enormous pain and anxiety, really kind of chilled me out. It kind of put me in a different mindset also. It made me look at my situation from a calm perspective and not a panic situation. And like I said, I think it was a multitude of things. It really was absolutely a multitude of things. But my doctors, I will tell you truthfully, my doctors, none of them were supportive in terms of telling me anything positive. Everybody was like, my neurologist was like, man, son, sometimes you just got to take what life deals you. And I'm like, what is that? So again, I looked at even my doctors these are tenured surgeons and specialists in their field who've been working in the medical field for 20 plus years. And I looked at them and said, all right, your nose is buried in a medical book and my nose is out here in the real world. I know what I'm capable of doing, so I'm going to go out there and do it. And I just think that's what it is. I really think that it's about digging deep. You just got to dig deep.
Well, Brad, you have an inspiring story of resilience, and that's why we wanted to have you on and have established quite a brand. How do people find you? I know you guys have a great presence on Instagram. You're doing some stuff, some grassroots marketing. How can people find you, our listeners, our viewers?
Yeah, we do a lot of digital marketing. Like I said, we're distributed across the country. I would tell you that our marketing presence is going to expand dramatically over the course of the next year and beyond. We have national partners. Like I said, we're in Costco's, Total Wines, Bevmo's, Kroger's, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. We're in a lot of golf clubs. You can check out any of the social media footprints from Facebook to YouTube to LinkedIn and Twitter or X now to Instagram. And we are at Bushwood Spirits, and we are support and sponsor several PGA Tour golf tournaments. We sponsor some LPGA tournaments, some Champions Tour events. So we're out there definitely and building our presence literally daily.
Awesome. Well, it was really great to have you on the show. It was very inspiring, and I'm sure we'll be in touch more. Here's to you, man. Great stuff. We really appreciate you and appreciate your time.
It's delicious, and thank you for providing our toasting vehicle for the end of season 2 and being a guest here on season 3.
Did we send the vodka to you guys?
Yeah, we have that too. Yeah. I'll give it. I'm definitely going to try that as well.
Yeah. Try that, baby.
We'll break that open too.
Thanks, boys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Great seeing you.
See you.
Take care.
All right, buddy. Well, that was terrific. There was so many good nuggets there to take away. I will tell you this. One of the things that stands out to me, and maybe it's because my company's called 3 Bridges, it was this comment about bridges, building bridges with people over your lifetime because they all come back to help you later, right? In your darkest moments, the worst thing that can happen is for you to be alone and not have people to lean on, people to talk to, those bridges in your life. And I can tell you from a personal perspective, that's what's gotten me through. You're one of my bridges, and that's why we're doing this show. And there's a lot of other people that have been that for me, that bridge that have helped me through tough times. And I think that's a great piece of advice.
I think especially it's why we started the podcast, right? Is the idea, because when we were physically alone during the pandemics, to recognize that you're not really alone, right? That there's somebody, even if you don't have anyone you feel personally that you can reach out to, there's a community, right? We've talked about, I mean, it's funny because we're talking about a guy who has a spirits company, but if you're having trouble with alcoholism, there's Al-Anon or AA as a community. There's all kinds of different communities out there if you don't feel like you can share something that feels very private or very intimate, even with your closest friends. You are not alone, and nobody is really alone. You can come and listen to this podcast or other podcasts that are clearly inferior to ours. But what also struck me about Brad was his resilience and his belief in himself, right? I mean, trust yourself, trust your body. He knew there was an answer to his physical ailments, even if his doctors didn't. He just believed, which is not the same as wishful thinking, but it's trusting to know that there can be an answer out there. And he believed what his body was telling him, and he didn't stop until he had an answer.
Do you know how many times I've heard that recently? And I don't know why this is coming at me so much now. Maybe it's for a reason for my own personal health, but that it's literally mind over matter. That literally you can will yourself to be better. Like there's doctors want to fill you up with medicine, tell you all the negative things, all the bad things that can happen. But there is a holistic way, and there are ways to have the right energy to make yourself. Will it cure everything? No, but there's so many things in sort of your emotional well-being that will help your physical well-being. And that is such a critical component of what he was talking about. The doctors were so negative. They were pumping him full of bad drugs, doing all kinds of different shit. And then he was able to recover from that and be in his mind, know that he was going to get better.
Look, there's a balance of the benefits of Western medicine and Eastern medicine, right? I mean, Eastern medicine cannot discover your cancer early, right? They can't find it. It can't necessarily give you certain advanced treatments. On the other hand, Western medicine often ignores the power of the mind and the power of the spirit. And so I think as we get into this stage of our lives, this back nine, it's important to have mental well-being as well as physical well-being. We've talked about this quite a bit, but the mental well-being can help with the physical well-being, and the physical well-being can help with the mental well-being.
Absolutely. Another great episode. We are in season 3 and having a good time. I think we're rolling along. So we appreciate you taking the time with us. We appreciate Brad Carpenter coming on. Great show.
And for providing
Bushwood Spirits, Front 9. You can find it at bushwoodspirits.com. So all that Caddyshack reference, we had a lot to talk about. That was great stuff. We'll see you next time on the Back Nine. We're really happy that you could join us today on the Back Nine podcast, and we're really trying to build a community.
Yeah, so please not only listen, subscribe, follow us, download, share with your friends that you found something in our community here.
We really, really appreciate everybody who's downloaded even a single episode and shared the time with us. We know your time is valuable. Please also give us a 5-star review if you can. Thanks so much.
So I've mentioned 3 Bridges Consulting. What they do is they market your company. They lead the creative, they find the audience. What they produce, commercials, social media content, possibly even documentaries. It's long form, it's short form. One recent success story, working with a home services company in Chicago, a company that refaces cabinets. They launched a campaign in January They had 5 times the revenue of their previous January and $1 million more in revenue than in any prior month after they launched this campaign. Once again, it's 3 Bridges Consulting, the number 3, bridgesconsulting.co. The Back Nine is fully baked with Hugs and Kisses by Stella Mix Productions and recorded at Pixelworks Studios in Delray Beach, Florida.